There is something you know you need to do. You've known it for weeks, maybe months, and every single day you don't do it, a piece of you disappears, not dramatically, not in any way the world would notice, quietly, like a candle burning down in a room no one enters. Here's what no one tells you about running from your duty. The thing you're avoiding doesn't go away. It doesn't shrink, it grows. It wraps itself around your chest and becomes the background hum of your entire life. So constant, you almost forget it's there. Almost. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the price of staying silent, the price of not doing the thing you were born to do, is always higher than the price of speaking up. Let me ask you something. And I need you to be honest, not with me, with yourself. You're sitting in meetings where you smile and nod, but your jaw is clenched so tight it aches by lunch. You go home and stare at the ceiling because something at work or in your life isn't right, and you can't unsee it. You've tried. You've rehearsed the conversation 100 times. In the shower, on your commute, lying awake at 2 in the morning when sleep refuses to come. You know exactly what you'd say, every word, every pause. But then the moment arrives, and you swallow it. Again. You tell yourself you're being strategic. You tell yourself the timing isn't right, that it's not your fight. But deep down, past every excuse, past every justification, you know the truth. You're not being strategic, you're afraid. Not of failure, of what it will cost you to finally do the right thing. If that landed, stay. Because what the Bhagavad Gita reveals in these next 8 verses isn't ancient philosophy, it's a mirror. And what you see in it might be the most uncomfortable thing you encounter all week. Her name is Meera. She's 29. A compliance analyst at a healthcare technology startup called MedBridge. She joined 2 years ago because she believed in the mission, making healthcare data accessible, affordable, and safe. Her manager Rohan recruited her personally. He's brilliant, charismatic, the kind of leader who remembers your birthday and fights for your promotion in rooms you'll never enter. Everyone in the company respects him. Meera considered him more than a boss. She considered him a friend. 6 weeks ago, Meera stumbled onto something she was never supposed to see. A hidden data pipeline quietly routing millions of anonymized patient records to a third-party advertising firm. People's diagnoses, prescriptions, therapy notes, stripped of names, yes, but tagged with enough metadata to re-identify nearly anyone. It wasn't a glitch, it wasn't an oversight, it was architected, deliberate. And the authorization trail led directly to Rohan. Meera confronted him, quietly, behind closed doors. Rohan leaned back in his chair and smiled. He told her it was standard industry practice, that she was overthinking it. Then, almost warmly, he reminded her that her performance review was coming up, that he'd personally recommended her for the senior analyst position. The message didn't need to be spelled out. Stay quiet, be smart, don't ruin a good thing. She has the evidence, all of it, sitting on a USB drive in her desk drawer. One email to the regulatory board and it's done. But Rohan isn't just her boss. He's the person who gave her a chance when no one else would. Half her team could lose their jobs if the company collapses. And Meera, she'd be branded the whistleblower, the one who couldn't be trusted. So the USB drive sits in the drawer. And every morning, Meera opens her laptop, joins the stand-up call, and pretends everything is fine. But it's not fine. She can feel it. a slow, quiet rot spreading through her chest, the weight of what she knows, and the heavier weight of what she refuses to do about it. One Thursday evening, Meera drives across the city to a modest apartment filled with old books and faded photographs and the lingering smell of cardamom chai. This is where Balaji uncle lives, her late father's closest friend from the army. 74 years old, gentle hands, steady eyes. He pours her chai without asking. He always does. He looks at her across the small kitchen table and says nothing for a long moment. He doesn't need to ask. He can see it. So Meera tells him everything, the data, Rohan's smile, the USB drive, the fear that has made a permanent home between her ribs. Balaji uncle listens without interrupting. When she finishes, he sets down his cup slowly, and when he speaks, his voice is low and steady. Meera, do you know what your father used to say about fear? He said, fear is never the enemy. Inaction is. Fear tells you something matters. Inaction tells the world you've already surrendered. He leans forward. You think you're protecting yourself by staying quiet, but you're not, beta. You're abandoning yourself, and the world will know. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually the people around you will see that you knew and did nothing. And that reputation, the reputation of someone who stood by while others were harmed, that follows you longer than any job title ever will. Your father faced a choice like this once. In the service, he could have looked the other way. It would have been easier. But he told me something I've carried every single day since. He said, a man who runs from his duty to escape pain will find that the pain follows him everywhere. But a man who stands in his duty, even when it burns, that man is free. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose. What matters is that you stood. If you lose your job, you will rebuild. If you lose friends, they were never real. But if you lose yourself, if you let this truth rot inside you year after year, that is a loss you do not come back from. Now, hear the original Sanskrit. 5,000 years ago, on a battlefield called Kurukshetra, these words were spoken to a warrior who had every reason to walk away, every reason to lay down his bow and vanish into silence. They were spoken not to shame him, but to awaken him, to remind him of a truth he had buried beneath his grief. Listen. Swadharmam api chavekshya na vikampitum dharmyadhi yuddhachreyo anyat kshatriyasya na vidyate yadrichaya chopapannam swargadvaram apavritam sukhina kshatriyah parth labhante yuddhamidrisham atha chetvamimam dharmyam sangramam na karishyasi tatah swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papamavapsyasi akirtim chapi bhutani kathayishyanti te avyayam sambhavitasya cha kirtir maranadatirichyate bhayadranaduparatam mansyante tvam maharatha yesham cha tvam bahumato bhutva yasyasi laghavam avacha vadangshcha bahun vadishyanti tavahita nindantastava samarthyam tato dukkhataram nukim hato va prapsyasi swargam jitva va bhokshase mahim tasmaduttishth kaunteya yuddhaya kritanishchayah sukh dukhe same kritva labha labhau jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsyasi. Here is what these sacred words mean. Krishna tells Arjuna, considering your own sacred duty, you should not waver. For a warrior, there is nothing greater than a righteous battle. A war like this arrives unsought, like an open gateway to heaven. Only the most fortunate are called to such a moment. But if you refuse to fight this righteous battle, you will abandon your duty and your honor, and sin will follow you. The world will speak of your disgrace for generations, and for one who has been honored, dishonor is worse than death. The great warriors will believe you fled out of fear. Those who once revered you will dismiss you with contempt. Your enemies will mock your strength. They will say unspeakable things. What could be more painful than that? If you fall in battle, you attain heaven. If you conquer, you enjoy the earth. Therefore, arise, son of Kunti, resolve to fight. And then, the very heart of it all. Treat pleasure and pain as equals, gain and loss as the same, victory and defeat as the same. Then engage, and in doing so, you will incur no sin. Now here is why these words were needed. Arjuna, the greatest archer the world had ever known, stood in his chariot between two massive armies. On one side his brothers, on the other his cousins, his teachers, the grandfather who raised him. This wasn't a war against strangers. It was a war against his own blood. And Arjuna broke. He dropped his bow. His hands trembled. He told Krishna, "I cannot do this. I would rather beg for food in the streets than rule a kingdom soaked in the blood of my family." And Krishna, his charioteer, his guide, the divine voice cutting through the noise, did not comfort him. He said, "This is your dharma. This is what you were born for. And if you walk away, you don't find peace. You find a slow, permanent shame that no amount of running will cure." Krishna wasn't being cruel. He was being honest. He told Arjuna exactly what Balaji uncle told Meera, that the battlefield doesn't vanish because you close your eyes, that the weight of what you refuse to do is always heavier than the weight of doing it. Arjun's war was fought with arrows. Meera's is fought with data and silence and a USB drive in a drawer. But the teaching is the same. Your duty does not care about your comfort, and the moment you abandon it, you don't save yourself, you lose yourself. Meera doesn't sleep that night. She sits on the edge of her bed, turning Balaji uncle's words over and over, like a stone worn smooth by water. She thinks about her father, about what he would have done, about what he did do once, when no one was watching and everything was on the line. At 5 in the morning, she drives to the office. The building is empty. Her footsteps echo in the hallway like a second heartbeat. She sits at her desk, opens the drawer, and picks up the USB drive. Her hands are shaking, she notices. She doesn't wait for them to stop. She doesn't leak it to the press. She doesn't make a spectacle. She opens her email, types a formal complaint to the National Regulatory Board, attaches every file, CCs the company's legal counsel, and presses send. Then she sits back in her chair and breathes. Within 10 days, an investigation is opened. Rohan is suspended. 3 colleagues whom Meera used to eat lunch with every single day stop talking to her entirely. Her LinkedIn inbox goes silent. The people who once called her inspiring have nothing to say. She is reassigned to a different department. The senior analyst promotion goes to someone else. And here's what matters. No one throws her a parade. No one calls her a hero. The world does not rearrange itself to reward Meera for doing the right thing. But something shifts, that tightness in her chest, The rod she'd been carrying for 6 weeks begins to loosen. Not all at once, not dramatically, but enough. Enough to breathe again, enough to look in the mirror without flinching, enough to sleep through the night without rehearsing excuses for a life she didn't choose. 6 months later, a former colleague sends her a message. Just 2 lines. I wanted to say something too. I just didn't have the courage. Thank you. Meera's life is not easier. Let me be clear. It is harder in almost every way you can measure. But it is hers. For the first time in a very long time, her life is actually hers. This teaching might be for you right now if you've been carrying a truth that makes your stomach clench every time you think about saying it out loud. Every night you rehearse the brave version of yourself, but every morning you put the mask back on. The safest path in front of you feels like the most dangerous thing you could do to your soul. Deep inside, you already know the life you're living isn't the one you were meant to live, and the gap between the two grows wider every day. Here is your Gita journal question for today. What is the one duty, the one truth, the one conversation, the one action you've been avoiding because the cost of doing it terrifies you? And what is it already costing you every single day that you don't? Write it in the comments, not for me, for you. Because sometimes the very first act of courage is simply admitting what you've known all along. And remember this, the battlefield doesn't disappear because you refuse to step onto it. But the warrior inside you, that disappears the moment you do.